Welcome to Flipside of Crypto. Joining me today is a very special guest, Ben Caselin. Ben, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So Ben is a strategist and a part of AAX cryptocurrency exchange. Ben, could you tell us a bit about your exchange? Where were you founded? Where are you from? Just the usual details.
Sure. So AAX was founded in early 2018, which was kind of right after the ICO boom and the whole all-time high of Bitcoin at 20K or slightly below. And yeah, we entered the space based in Hong Kong with offices around Asia and the UK. And we entered into a kind of technology partnership with London Stock Exchange Group, LSEG Technology, which is their kind of solutions provider, technology solutions provider. So we had this idea that we would build the exchange that would be able to capture the institutional volumes that were bound to come in the future. And that is kind of our whole approach. And we wanted to professionalize kind of the industry, and we've changed our strategy as well. So it'll be interesting to explore that.
Indeed. So right off the bat, I had a conversation not too long ago, actually, about our industry being very much the wild, wild west when it comes to standardization. Do you have the same sentiment that everything is quite custom right now in terms of customer experience, that you have kind of reinvent the wheel, so to speak?
I mean, part of it is also because the types of participants in the space are so varied. So, what the institutions need is a regulated exchange. They need very solid custody structures. They need, they need to be able to trade with high frequency, maybe benefit from co-location services. Whereas maybe an unbanked individual using Bitcoin to send remittances between the US and El Salvador needs a different type of experience, right? So, we're at this place where we have like, 2, maybe 3% of the global population, using crypto or engaging crypto. And so whatever year, let's say it goes up by another few 100 million, that's not just 100 million of the same people. That's like 100 million of different needs, different preferences, different languages. So yeah, it is a very complex situation and really difficult to navigate as a business.
But how is it different from, let's say, 2017, 2021? What changed?
I mean, there are some similarities, right? You could say that the current kind of meme boom is very similar to the ICO boom. And maybe, way back in the day, maybe around like colored Bitcoins, whatever, there's always something that comes up. But I think, compared to 2017, I think a lot of people have been surprised because there was a sense that people understood cycles now. And, 2017 has been, this was the result. It's very similar to 2013. And so now we can expect this type of dynamic. And instead, Bitcoin and with it, all cryptocurrencies do what they do best. And that is just, flip it around and show you something that you didn't expect. So I think, there's that same kind of craziness that we saw in 2017. And that's also because many new people have joined the space. So while like kind of a core group of maybe people that have already experienced 1 or 2 cycles, maybe they're strong at hodling, maybe they're not distracted by the meme coins. But with all these new users coming in, it's very much the same as what we saw in 2017, isn't it? Except that now maybe the stakes are higher. And I would say the narrative and the counter narratives are much more kind of divisive.
Yeah, and as certain individuals, we shall not mention them by name, but they usually send rockets up to space, can kind of control the market on a whim, it seems. And as we look at 2017, 2021, from an exchange's perspective, right? So do you see more of a maturance, let's just say that, if that's even a word, let's just say, are they better at trading, or is it still that the vast majority will most likely lose money because they're not skilled enough or do not dedicate the proper amount of time and effort to. It's essentially a craft, if you were to ask, as compared to 2017 and 2021. What do you see, Ben?
Well, I guess first of all, yes, people that have been in this space for longer, for sure, they're stronger at the moment, and they'll be trading more kind of, with less leverage, or maybe no leverage at all. Maybe they don't trade at all. Maybe that's the lesson they've learned from the previous
Mm,
cycle. But again, we have so many new people, and in 4 years' time, we'll have so many new people again. And so people are driven by the same types of emotions always, right?
mm,
And while I do agree with you that certain people that send rockets into space have a disproportionate influence,
yeah.
you know, when the Fed holds a meeting,
Mm,
everybody is sitting on the tip of their chair, and it's a very similar effect on global economics. It's not strange for people to have influence over markets, right? It's a psychological thing. And so I think if we look at objectively, we can say that compared to 2017, right now, the market infrastructure is much better. So
mm,
back when we were founded in 2018, that's also kind of when LSEG came around, backed in the
mm,
US, a little bit later on FTX. Like it was a whole different generation of exchanges that came up. Usually derivatives exchanges, usually kind of focused on the institutional kind of narrative. Um, but now we're here and we have new circumstances. We did not expect a global meltdown and the fiscal policies that we have today. There's much more knowledge in the space, but with it also much more cunning behavior.
mm.
So, we're now in a situation where we see more than 10,000 cryptocurrencies. Back in 2017, maybe it was slightly below 2,000, and countless meme coins and distractions in the space. And then there's the institutions that have actually come in, but they come in, they command much more capital, and they play a whole different game. And for newcomers, that's very difficult to navigate. So I think right now in this cycle, maybe even more so than any time before, it really boils down to kind of conviction and commitment.
Mm,
It's not easy not to get distracted by the market. And you could say like, oh, well, now is the time for more regulation.
mm.
And you could say that's the answer, but maybe it's apparent to some in the space that government is now also, having to negotiate their kind of authority or no authority, right? In this space.
Brilliant points, actually. Didn't think of it that way. Um, it's always seemed like there are laggards, right? So governments essentially, and the crypto space is constantly evolving. But at times it seems that it involves in a very peculiar way, let's just say. It's not efficient, meme coins to be precise. Um, when you see this behavior, right? So you see people losing money on the exchange. What are your initial thoughts as a strategist from your exchange's perspective? Do you take this behavioral economics approach into, okay, so our users are doing this? Do you actually change your approach to it or your education to the user? Or do you simply say, well, that's what it'll behave like?
Yeah, this is very interesting. So, I mean, generally, let's say it's a free market approach.
Yeah.
So, for example, while I may have my convictions, which
Yeah.
is quite Bitcoin oriented, very
Mhm.
focused actually. I can see quality in other projects. I can see that there could be growth in those projects, and more importantly, people come to trade tokens and they want to trade these cryptocurrencies,
Mhm.
unless it's like obviously a scam. Who are we to say like, no, we won't list it because we don't like certain dog coins or certain,
Mhm.
whatever. So you have to balance it. And so we kind of have an approach where we say, well, 50% of what we list is going to be based on kind of our vision and conviction, but
Mhm.
50% has to be in kind of response to what the users want and what they're asking for and why they come to our exchange.
Mhm.
And uh, but I think there is a responsibility in there when it comes to the educational part.
Yeah.
So you won't find an article that's going to shill a particular token. It's going to
Mhm.
explain a project. It's going to say this is where the value kind of comes from. This is
Mhm.
how it's traded. These are some of the opportunities, and also this is how we interpret it. So we don't see Dogecoin as the future of of the global, economy. But yeah, we can see that there is value in coming together as a community and, maybe sticking up a proverbial middle finger to both traditional and crypto, to just like,
Yeah.
no. So, okay, we have to be open, I guess.
So if we were to just explain it to someone on the street, okay, so you have Binance, you have Kraken, and now you have AAX, right? So what should they take away? How do they differentiate between other exchanges and AAX? What would be the key differentiating criteria, in your opinion?
Mhm. Well, okay, so there's a couple of basic things we can say, right? You can say, well, when you look at an exchange, you want it to be trustworthy.
Yeah,
Okay, so trust is won over time,
yeah.
right? I think recently there was some exchange operators that absconded with some Bitcoin from an exchange in South Africa. Okay, so the trust is lost.
Yeah.
What did it take for them to be trusted in the first place? I don't know. I don't know what their marketing message was. I don't know how they got people to trade with them.
Mm.
But generally, like when we founded the exchange, there's a lot of communication. There's a lot of partnerships that you engage in.
Mm.
You give transparency. You visit conferences. You speak to people. But in the end, it's a people's game, and people have to trust you. They have to see that you have the integrity that you have the right intentions. So then comes a very basic technical thing, which is just your security setup,
Mm.
and so you have to be transparent around how you have organized your security. And for example, at AAX, and I'm pretty sure at Binance and Coinbase and all of them, there's standard things that you implement around kind of CCSS, cryptocurrency
Mm.
security standard. It's just make sure it's segregated, SegWit, and make sure there's no single point of failure. All the basic stuff, basically, cold storage.
Mhm.
Things have developed, and I think a lot of the basics will be in order at all of the big exchanges. But
Mhm.
then comes the kind of the level of attitude. So if you're running an exchange, is that exchange holding Bitcoin in the treasury, for example? Do they have the conviction, or are they still actually very US dollar minded? Um, are they going to list very high listing fees and thereby kind of side with projects and token issuers rather than with their users and potential investors, right? There's all these questions that you have to ask. We don't really charge for listing unless it's like difficult for us to list it because we can't hedge and etc. And then we figure out a deal. Um, I think it comes down to basic human conduct, and
Mhm.
people have to trust you, right?
Right. So essentially, if I were to choose between 10 exchanges and I see AAX, the reason I should, let's just say, put my trust in you is because of your track record, essentially, if I understood correctly, that you made the right decisions and have conviction behind them, essentially. So that would be your marketing message, in
It
essence.
must be, because I mean, if you're a new exchange, you can come out with a bang, but
Mhm.
still over time, people have to, you have to earn that trust.
Yeah.
So, and then of course, it's about creating the right conditions. So, look, if someone is living in the US, they can't trade with AX, right? Because we
Right.
don't serve US, so they will have to trade with Kraken or Coinbase.
Mm.
Um, there's basic stuff. What are your fiat on and off ramps? We offer customer service 24/7, but what if you only speak Spanish? Are we responsive? Yes, we're responsive, but are we responsive to everything? No, because we also have our own conviction and kind of
Yeah.
direction.
Yeah.
And we don't engage in pump dumps, and so we
Mm.
don't have that reputation.
Mm.
We hardly ever have outages. If anything, sometimes there's widespread
Mm.
issues across
Yeah.
markets, and that
Yeah.
affects all markets. Yeah.
Yeah. So that covered that point brilliantly. However, here's a point where I don't sleep well at night, actually.
Mm.
Security and regulation. So it seems every single day, our editorial staff has a meeting and X exchange got hacked, wallets stolen, or X country is now banning or putting regulatory scrutiny over a project. How do you tackle this ever shifting landscape? It seems that you kind of know what the world map is, but it's constantly shifting. And how do you, first of all, how do you feel about it? And from a second point, uh, what are your strategic decisions with this changing landscape?
Yeah. So maybe the first thing I think we should always agree on is that we live in a digital world now. And it's not just crypto. I think every
Mm,
week, every 2 weeks, there's some big hack, some state attacked another state. You know what I mean?
yeah.
This has been going on for a long time. And
Mm,
crypto is, of course, it's a completely digital industry.
mm,
So it's part of that. But over the past few years, a lot has developed. Like
mm,
that's like you cannot, like with what was the exchange again? Quadrica. I don't even know how to say it. But
mm,
where the founder died, or maybe died, and those funds got locked up.
mhm,
Like that stuff cannot happen anymore. And if it does, then those are bad actors. But it's not because it's not possible or because technically you can't offer security. An exchange is very secure.
mm,
Uses very simple solutions around cold storage and kind
mm,
of, yeah, when you have to send you have some in a hot wallet, of course. um, you know, multi-sig, as I mentioned before,
mm,
offsite. There's so many things you can organize insurance. So let's say the solutions are there. This is not like
mhm,
an ongoing issue. Number two is there are scammers for sure. And there have always been scammers, and people need to educate themselves and become wised up. And I can also imagine that younger generations are much less likely to be scammed. So it's also kind of well, I mean, they could be, but let's say not
yeah.
very young generations, but let's say the guys that have grown up a little bit, but also grew up in a digital age and know not to trust some random email promising you $1 million, right?
Mm,
So let's say there's just a lot of development in this new digital culture that we all have to kind of go through.
yeah.
But how do we deal with it? So make the right decisions, very logical,
Mm,
basic decisions around security. Um, there is some really good custody providers. So if somebody doesn't want to hold their crypto in an exchange, but does want to trade, and there's deals you
mm,
can make in exchange, you hold it in custody.
mhm,
Um, and then when we actually, also people need to understand that the weakness in this industry is unfortunately still off the block, yeah, off chain, basically, right? So maybe on an exchange, maybe somebody walking down the street. Those are the danger zones, right? Bitcoin itself is secure
mm,
and is the most secure. And I think what people also have not really come to grips with at this moment is that while we may talk about blockchain and we may talk about altcoin projects and dexes, not all dexes and not all projects are equally decentralized.
mm,
And whether that's a security issue, meaning it can be hacked, or whether it's somebody
mm,
can run up with your funds or exert an incredibly disproportionate, amount of influence over a
mhm,
protocol. I mean, that is all part of education.
yeah.
The solutions are there, but the culture is
Mhm,
not there yet.
yeah, absolutely. But what about the regulation aspect? So
Mhm.
right now, for example, you are covered by a jurisdiction, let's just say, and you kind of have to abide by its rules, by its tax code, etc. And as you can see almost every day, for example, so in Germany now you have special funds. You can quite an exciting development, but in Korea, in China, it's completely the opposite direction. How do you navigate that space as an exchange?
Mm. So part of it is just a very simple technical answer, which is, for example, and we're not the only ones. I think
Mm,
Coinbase also has this structure where basically you operate the exchange in the cloud, and so we do that with.
okay. Huh. Stalled for me.
Yeah, I mean,
There you go. You stalled for me.
sorry. Let me restart the answer. If
Yes.
as soon as yeah.
Yes. So essentially, that the exchange is in the cloud. So this allows you to basically offset this legal requirement.
No, sorry, I didn't explain it fully. So
Yeah.
what I mean to say is that part of the operational kind of the operational structure is in the cloud, basically with
Right.
AWS, and very specifically, kind of our engines, they're running in
Right.
Singapore in an
Yeah.
availability zone that's provided by
Mhm.
AWS. if for some reason that had to quickly be dismantled,
Mm-hmm.
then that is just a matter of, you click a few buttons and, you pay a few fees, and within hours or weeks, no, not weeks, days, you can
Mm-hmm.
be operational in Australia or the US or where.
Okay.
This is very different from running a data center where, let's say, you're based somewhere, you have all your technology, and then a government tells you you can't do
Mm-hmm.
this. It's going to take
Mm-hmm.
you months to change
Yeah.
to a different location. So that's kind of a technical part, right? Staff can move, you can move remote. All of this is possible.
Right.
Sorry, yeah.
Yeah, so that's quite interesting. So meaning that even, for example, we would see, yeah, Singapore is now, against crypto exchanges, wants them to move out or has stringent taxes. You'd be able to say, oh, all right, we're just moving shop and do it quite quickly, actually. So a user can feel safe with their funds if they're, for example, using a bigger exchange such as AAX.
Yeah, I think the crypto industry is a global borderless industry,
Mm.
unfortunately still having to operate in a bordered world.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's we don't have to accept that as a reality. It doesn't mean you have to break the law. It just means you don't have to accept that reality. And
Mm.
nobody does anywhere in any industry for any reason. It's all about negotiating those borders together.
Yeah.
And I think that is the kind of key approach that we have. And so when it comes to regulation and how to navigate it, some things make sense, right? Nobody, and what are we regulating? I think there's
Mm.
many levels. So
Mm.
for example, let's start at the very simple,
Yeah.
everybody can understand this level. If you're running an exchange, it makes sense that at some point there's going to come some regulation about what you can do,
Mm.
right? And about what you can't do, because your users are they're just people with money, and you're not supposed to act like a criminal. So there's some rules that need to be
Mm.
enforced. Okay, makes sense. um, Go a level lower when it's maybe issuing a new project. Okay, maybe there should be some regulation. Maybe if somebody's promising a particular return, right? There's all these rules that we can
Mm.
think about that make sense. Even in a completely free market, it makes sense to come to standards.
Mm.
Um, but then you go to the level of protocol, and I don't mean like an Ethereum where there's a
Mm.
founder, but I mean Bitcoin very specifically. And it's just not really up to anybody, any government, to decide anything about it. It exists just
Mm.
as other things exist, and then it's more like, well, okay, so what can we do with it? But the existence is there. We have to deal with it now. It's a
Mhm.
reality, and I think governments are asking questions at all these levels,
Mhm.
and that's why they're shifting. And so as an exchange, it doesn't mean you have to disobey. It doesn't mean you have
Mhm.
to disregard, but it definitely doesn't mean you just wait for your orders to be served and then you execute. This is a negotiation.
Yes.
So even in Hong Kong, recently it was announced that basically retail is not allowed to trade
Mhm.
on to trade, basically to trade crypto, even if you're licensed in Hong Kong or you're licensed elsewhere to serve Hong Kong. You are not allowed to serve retail. That's
Mhm.
97 or 96% of Hong Kong. That's a couple of million people.
Yeah.
Only the millionaires, US dollar
Mhm.
millionaires, can trade Bitcoin. Okay, so as an exchange, we cannot necessarily disobey that,
Right.
but we all have to recognize that each individual has to make their own choice as to, as to what to do with that
Mhm.
information. And what we can do is engage in conversation. So we do actually write a letter to the regulator. We do actually have conversations with other partners in the space. Uh, yeah, if we can't operate here, we can't operate, but we'll do our best, right?
Right. And how's that negotiation going along, actually? Just as a slight remark, did the regulators understand the decentralized nature of Bitcoin? Do they understand it in a sense that they're willing to relinquish control? Essentially, it is a power game, right? And do they understand that this might be beneficial to their, well, constituents, essentially?
Yeah, this is very complex because all those questions have a particular assumption.
Yeah.
So okay, so maybe the first thing is like, it's really clear from our conversations, also
Yeah.
with other participants in the space,
Yeah.
that education is not just downward. Education is also upward, and there's a lot of conversation needed. That this is not just play money. I
Yeah.
mean, some of it is, but let's say the core of it is not. It's
Yeah.
not just play money. It's a real attempt at coming up with an alternative way of engaging money and each other, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a big conversation. And then the second thing is, yeah, do they understand that it's about relinquishing control? Probably.
Yeah.
And that's also part of the reason why
Yeah.
it's not welcomed with open arms. But you know, Hong Kong has been really open so far. It's basically been hands off for forever. And it's only now, and it's, you know, it's not about like criticizing Hong Kong or anything. It's actually just everywhere around the world, countries are figuring out what to do with this. And then there's regional questions. You know, China is a bit more hardcore when it comes to mining, the Bitcoin miners, for example. And part of that is now reflected in the Hong Kong kind of approach. How is it going? I don't know. You know, things can change. And I think even in their statement, the regulator did indicate that in the future, things may change. And maybe I can add to this if I'm not boring you. But like, and this is not about Hong Kong, but about any regulator. Like there is always this argument, which is like, oh, you know, it's about protecting the consumer. And, you know, it's about money laundering. But it's also a lot about ignoring the facts. You know, like money laundering is not that big of an issue in crypto as it is portrayed. I'm sure there's issues.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, we have to see through this, and I think we live now in this day and age. We can see with open eyes, and I think everybody can see what's going on. So we need to be firm, and that also means as a company, just be firm in your conviction, and you know, try and come to truth. Right.
That just circles very well into the flip side, our show staple. And that flip side is, so what are the difficulties your exchange faces every day and at the moment, or you think you'll face in the future?
Okay, so competition is fierce in this space. There's not 2 or 3 exchanges, there's hundreds.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's number one, right? And that is always difficult. I mean, you know, and I you know, personally, and also as an exchange, we actually, our approach is a very friendly approach towards other exchanges. So we're not, you know, shy to like write about Binance Smart Chain or write about you know, FTX, what they're doing. There's no issue, because in the end, this is a very small industry, and I think all of us, including probably you and many others in this space, we all share this space, and we all play slightly different roles, and then we have competition. So, you know, while we are friendly, you know, it is still, you know, you still have to try and get your market share. So we can't lie about that. That's difficult. That means penetrating new markets. So we're actually growing very fast in Russia, for example. It's like one of our fastest growing markets. And, you know, and when we find something like that, then we change our strategies, and we make sure we have Russian language and Russian customer service. We hired a great country manager, and yeah, we have. It's all about coming up with big plans and executing. I guess, of course, regulation is an issue, right? It's not fun when you hear suddenly that things have to change. You may have to work remote. You may have to go elsewhere. And that asks something of you as an individual as well, it's not just an everyday job. It's right. It's kind of intense. It's kind of like holding crypto, basically. This whole thing is just intense, isn't it? Then, you know, what are the ways that you can, if users come to your platform, why are they coming? You know, we've had, maybe it was like 1.5 years ago, we had these great bonuses. So, you know, you sign up, we give you, I don't know, $10, $20. Yeah, that attracted thousands of people a day who would then, you know, try and benefit from that. Not everybody, but, you know, people would benefit with multiple accounts and try and, this is difficult stuff you have to deal with. Like scammers are not just trying to scam users, they're also users trying to scam exchanges. So, right, it's all back and forth, right? So that's difficult. I think we've gotten through that, and we have pretty good systems around like bonus, and like we've tried now to actually offer trading for free.
Yes.
So just zero fees on Bitcoin
Yeah.
and maybe Ethereum, maybe Dogecoin, maybe some other coins. And actually, interestingly, it's not that interesting for people apparently. And you think why? And then you wonder, well, maybe because these particular people are not trading with hundreds of thousands of dollars and don't really see that a 2 cent discount matters. Okay, maybe that. So then we have to change our strategy again, and we're constantly looking what's going to hit the user in a way that they think, wow, this is an awesome exchange. And and that is what it is. It's a great exchange, and we do things, but there's other great exchanges. So yeah, what can you do? It's just going forward, driving discourse. I think these conversations are like really great, and just build awareness around that.
Yeah. And actually, just you coming to the flip side is essentially being just naked in front of the DailyCoin viewers, really builds trust. As right now, it seems that the big centralized institutions in the fiat world, so to speak, they seem like they're out of reach. As if you run into a bot or a automatic message system, it's like there's a wall. And the crypto sphere always had that little factor in it that I can kind of message the founder. It's still small enough, nascent enough. And I think these kind of conversations will highlight that these are real people. They're trying to build a different world, and it's bloody hard.
Yeah, it's true. I think
And
it is. So sorry, I think the main thing, right? Because I think every exchange operator will have the same type of experience. But if I look at the past 2 or 3 years, it's like a roller coaster, and things change all the time, right?
yeah,
But we've tried, like, for example, to offer the highest yield if you save your Bitcoin or whatever with us. Okay, we just said highest in the market. Lowest fees in the market. We've held that, and I think we still hold it because it's zero at the moment. What's the other thing? Okay, an app. Not every exchange is an app. Some have an app. Okay, we have both. We do discounts. So every month we offer, like, maybe this coming month will be like something like Solana half price. Okay, these are all ways that you can attract users.
Yeah.
And it just takes time and conviction and just endurance. That's what it is.
So essentially, if people want to learn more about AX, they should just go to your website, sign up, and basically try it for themselves. It's quite easy to use, I'll be honest. Now, I do have one parting question, and it has to do with Charles Hoskinson, actually. He said in a recent interview that 9 times out of 10, Ethereum will win against Bitcoin. From what I gathered in this conversation, you seem to have horns when we're talking about Bitcoin, essentially a bullish sentiment. What would your rebuttal be? Why is Bitcoin the most, let's just say, has the brightest future?
Well, I mean, there may be a great future for Ethereum as well. I mean, that doesn't discount the kind of value of other projects. Bitcoin, just in the way that it is structured and the way that it has responded to crises of all types of magnitude. And I'm not talking about price, because that's the interesting thing. It just doesn't matter for now. We're not talking about a 1-year project, right? If you think that fiat has been free floating the way it is in 1971, that's not that old, right? That's, what is it? 50, I don't know my calculator, 50 years. Okay, so Bitcoin is 12 years. Like, we're not talking about gold versus, so if we think that fiat has been free floating since around 1971, so that would be like 50 years of free floating fiat, where a number of them have seen hyperinflation, and Bitcoin is 12 years old. I mean, we're not talking about a huge difference, right? So we're saying, okay, there's a great track record. The mechanics are great. It's lived throughout crisis. It actually thrives on crisis and comes out, very solid with all the necessary adjustments that have been, that need to be made. And I don't mean to like the protocol necessarily, but just to the way it operates. So it's all great that 9 out of 10 Ethereum can win over Bitcoin because it offers more functionality.
Mm.
But when, I don't know if I can use the language, but when shit hits the fan, right? When the state cracks down,
Yeah.
there's no question. So that 1 out of 10 is maybe true, but I think that 1 out of 10 is kind of likely because we're dealing with a kind of very significant uh, revolution, and and I feel like this is no joke. There's a
Yeah.
lot of very rich people that are not going to be happy to see some things changing in the way that
Mm.
the
Mm.
world operates. So Ethereum, you can check it out on our
Mm.
YouTube. There's a nice conversation that I'm having with Leo Wees, and
Mm.
he's involved with the Lightning Network.
Mhm.
He said something very nice. He said that Bitcoin acts as a shield for the entire cryptocurrency space.
Wow.
And let's say Bitcoin was not there, and it's just somebody who
Mm.
founded some code, and they're sitting at home like, oh, look at this Dogecoin.
Mm.
You go into their home, you force them to shut it off, and it's done, right? But now, why would you do that when they can just transfer the funds into Bitcoin and it's safe? And so this shield metaphor, I kind of like it, and I think that Charles can be very grateful.
Great answer. Ben,
Right.
it's been truly a pleasure. Thank you for joining Flipside Crypto, and hopefully see you in the next episode.
Thank you so much.